If you think Nike makes money selling sneakers, you're analyzing the wrong business. The shoe is the most visible part of the company, but visibility is not the same as leverage. Something else inside the system produces the real advantage. Nike doesn't even own most of the factories that produce its products, yet the company generates more than $50 billion in annual revenue and sells sneakers at prices many competitors cannot match. So where does the real power in this business actually come from? To answer that, you have to go back to the beginning of the company. Nike did not start as a global brand with billion-dollar marketing campaigns or superstar athlete endorsements. It started as a small experiment in importing running shoes. In 1964, a young runner named Phil Knight founded a company called Blue Ribbon Sports with his former track coach Bill Bowerman. Their idea was simple: import high-quality running shoes from Japan and sell them to American runners. At the time, most athletic footwear was dominated by European brands like Adidas and Puma. Bowerman believed small design changes could give athletes an advantage, so he constantly experimented with traction patterns and materials that could improve performance. In one famous experiment, Bowerman poured rubber into his wife's waffle iron to create a new sole pattern. That unusual experiment eventually became the Waffle sole, one of Nike's earliest innovations. Early success came from runners who believed the design improved performance. At that stage, the company looked like a traditional performance equipment brand focused on engineering advantages. But a structural problem was already forming beneath the surface. Performance advantages in footwear rarely remain unique for long, because competitors eventually copy materials, manufacturing techniques, and design ideas. In other words, shoes eventually become commodities. So what happens when the product itself stops creating long-term advantage? How does a company maintain premium pricing when competitors can manufacture something similar? Shoes are not extremely complex products, and most are manufactured in similar factories across Asia using comparable materials. If that is true, why are some sneakers worth 2 or 3 times as much as others? The answer did not come from engineering alone. Nike began to realize that athletic products could represent something beyond equipment, because customers were not only buying shoes to run faster, they were buying symbols connected to identity and achievement. Instead of marketing shoes purely as tools, Nike began telling stories about discipline, effort, and personal improvement. Advertising shifted away from product specifications and toward the mindset of athletes pushing their limits. But how do you transform that idea into something powerful enough to scale across the world? The turning point came in 1988, when Nike launched one of the most famous advertising campaigns in business history. The campaign was built around 3 simple words: just do it. Those words were not describing footwear, technology, or design features. They were describing a mindset about perseverance and ambition, which allowed the brand to attach emotional meaning to a simple product. Nike then amplified that meaning through athlete storytelling. Instead of merely sponsoring athletes, the company built narratives around the careers and achievements of the most recognizable competitors in the world. Michael Jordan became the most famous example of this strategy. Rather than signing a standard endorsement deal, Nike created an entire product line around him that eventually became the Air Jordan brand. Today, the Jordan brand alone generates more than $6 billion in annual revenue, which is larger than the total revenue of many competing footwear companies. But this raises an important question. If competitors can manufacture similar sneakers, what exactly are customers paying for? Pause and consider that for a moment, because the factories producing these shoes often look remarkably similar. The materials are comparable, and the manufacturing processes across brands are not dramatically different. So why does one logo create dramatically higher demand than another? This is where the hidden structure of Nike's business becomes visible. On the surface, the company appears to be a footwear manufacturer because customers interact with sneakers, apparel, and advertisements featuring elite athletes. Retail stores and product launches reinforce the impression that Nike is primarily a product company. That visible layer attracts attention, but it does not explain where the company's real leverage exists. Behind that layer sits the operational structure that allows Nike to scale globally. The company does not operate massive manufacturing plants because production is handled by a global network of suppliers located primarily in Asia. By outsourcing manufacturing, Nike keeps production flexible and relatively low cost. This allows the company to focus resources on design, marketing, distribution, and brand storytelling. Nike has also built direct relationships with customers through its digital ecosystem. Today, more than 100 million members connect with the brand through platforms like the Nike app, Nike Run Club, and Nike Training Club. Those platforms allow Nike to promote products directly, launch limited releases, and collect valuable consumer data. The company increasingly controls the relationship with customers rather than relying entirely on third-party retailers. But even that operational system is not where the deepest advantage exists. The real leverage appears when you examine the brand itself. Nike has spent decades associating its logo with ambition, discipline, and elite performance. When customers see the Nike swoosh, they are not simply recognizing a manufacturer. They are recognizing a cultural symbol. This is the moment where the business model becomes clear. Factories make the product, but Nike controls the symbol. Manufacturers produce footwear, but Nike produces meaning. Products attract customers, but cultural symbols capture pricing power. That distinction explains why two sneakers made in similar factories can sell for dramatically different prices. The difference is not manufacturing complexity. The difference is brand perception. Nike's financial results reflect the power of that perception. The company generates more than $50 billion in annual revenue, and its gross margins often sit around 45 to 50%, which is unusually high for an apparel company. So what allows that pricing power to persist for decades? The answer lies in how the system compounds over time. If elite athletes wear the brand during historic moments, credibility increases. If credibility increases, the cultural symbol becomes stronger. If the symbol becomes stronger, more consumers want to associate themselves with that identity. And if production costs remain relatively low, the gap between cost and price becomes margin. This creates a powerful structural loop. But here is another question worth asking. If competitors can copy the product, why can't they copy Nike's advantage? Factories can be built quickly, and manufacturing techniques spread rapidly across industries. Cultural meaning, however, compounds slowly over decades. Nike has spent more than 30 years reinforcing the same narrative about ambition and achievement. In many years, the company spends more than $10 billion on marketing and athlete partnerships, strengthening the cultural signal behind the brand. Those investments are not simply advertising costs. They are reinforcing the company's most valuable asset, which is the meaning attached to the Nike symbol. This leads to a broader insight about how durable companies create advantage. Most people analyze what companies sell because the product is the most visible part of the business. Sophisticated observers analyze what companies control. Nike controls a symbol. That symbol represents ambition, discipline, and the pursuit of improvement. When customers buy Nike products, they are not simply purchasing footwear. They are participating in the identity attached to the brand. So the next time you see a pair of Nike sneakers, the question is not how they were manufactured. The more interesting question is what customers believe they are buying. Because in Nike's system, the shoe attracts attention. But the identity attached to the shoe captures the profit.